You're okay.
Oh, it's recording.
Okay, and Elaine, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
I hope you don't have to guard the shul because it's cold out there, I'm told.
I do, this Shabbos.
Oh God, I don't know how you do that, but thank you. And Roseanne, how are you doing?
Good to see I had to unmute. I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
Good.
We're all, we don't have, we're not having in-person services at my synagogue, which is very distressing. Saturday is just peculiar.
Which synagogue is that?
We do have a Zoom service on Friday at 3:30 before Shabbos. And at least we have that, but I really miss our community a great deal.
Which shul, which synagogue is that?
The Conservative Synagogue of Fifth Avenue.
Oh, that's
and we're very soft, so we are all very, we all are very interconnected.
That's on 55th Street, right?
It's on Fifth Avenue, just on 11th, just off of Fifth Avenue on 11th Street.
And what street?
11th Street and Fifth Avenue.
It's 11th Street,
That's
so it's really...
literally around the corner from where I live. I don't even have to cross the street.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's been a great thing during all of this. But we're a very close community. I really miss them.
And look what happened in Texas the other day. It's really...
I'm sorry. Oh, that's terrible because I have a grandnephew and his wife who live in Dallas, and they're all right. But
Dorothy, come over to see you.
But they, of course, they do know people from that.
That rabbi is a remarkable person.
That rabbi seems to be a remarkable person.
Yes.
There's you never know. You never know. You never know in such situations who has the courage to do what he did.
Yes.
And often it's the case that the people with the bravado, they're the ones who don't react. And the people who are the humble ones, and he seems to be a very humble man.
Yes.
He had the strength to do what he did, to throw a chair at a terrorist.
He claimed that his training.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Security training.
Yes.
Yeah. God bless
I think also the fact that he's a younger person, in my opinion, maybe gave him a little more feeling that he's able to do something.
Could be. So I did want to dedicate our talk. I'm going to go inside where I think I can hear all of you better. So come for a stroll with me for a moment and just go walking inside. So we'll pick it up in just a moment. Here we go. I think I'm better off inside totally. I think it's easier. Okay, here we go. Thank you for accompanying me inside. It's a little bit easier. Totally. If you have a moment, maybe to try to help me set this up. Okay, good. Let me tell you what I want to do today. I can't help myself. Yes, Tova.
Before we start on today, could I've been thinking about that kechatzot.
Yeah, please.
Can I say just one thing? The from sundown, the night progresses to midnight. From midnight, it progresses toward the dawn. But that night stopped at midnight. The whole night was kechatzot.
Right. Interesting. Thank you, Tova. Thank you.
And thank you for always giving us something to think about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great thought. What I wanted to do today, we're now in the portion of Yitro, and let me just back this up a little bit like this. And the portion of Yitro is actually a portion that deals with revelation. And I wanted to talk about an approach to revelation that from my earliest years I had heard about. And in my rabbinate, I started to think about whether really this approach that I'm about ready to present is the ideal. It may seem ideal, but is it ideal? And I've not shared what it is with you. And as a consequence, developed actually an alternative opposite approach. So the Jews now have left Egypt and they're gathering around Sinai. And the text then says the following. I'm now in chapter 20, sentence 15. The Torah says, V'chol ha'am ro'im. All the people saw. All could see. And I want to read to you from the Midrash, a rabbinic teaching. Milamed, this teaches, Shelo haya bahem echad suma. This teaches that there was not one amongst them who was blind. After all, the text says, V'chol ha'am ro'im. Every single person in the nation of Israel was able to see. Chol ha'am, the entire peoplehood. And hence, the rabbis deduce from this, if it says V'chol ha'am ro'im, everyone had clear sight. And then the rabbis continue, not only that, uminayin shelo haya bahem ilaim. As a matter of fact, they say that no one amongst them was mute. Everyone had the ability to speak. How do we know they had the ability to speak? Because there was at a certain point, actually, this is in chapter 24. There are two Revelation chapters. One is in Perikut chapter 19, and the other one is in chapter 24 at the end of Mishpatim. And they're descriptive of what happened around Revelation. So it says, and this is pretty well known, that the people in response to about ready to receive the Torah, vaya'anu, and they said, what did they say? Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. So the rabbis continue and then they say, well, if they're speaking, they're actually saying words and they are verbally accepting the Torah, and it says, Vayanu, all of the people said, let me find the exact text in chapter 24. I'm just turning my Bible. So the text says, Vayomru, and the people said, Kol asher diber Adonai naseh v'nishma. All the people said, they spoke, so there was no one amongst them mute. And then the rabbis continue and say, and no one was hard of hearing. How do I know that they were not hard of hearing? Because they say, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear. And one could expand upon this. Once they're saying Na'aseh, we will do, that means they had the capacity to do it all. What does it mean that they had the capacity to do? It means everyone was able to walk. After all, the Torah, first of all, they were standing at Sinai, apparently, and the Torah offers all kinds of commandments that involve sometimes going up to Jerusalem, and they're saying, we're ready to go up to Jerusalem. And it involves the use of their hands. And it just seems to me that this is an approach to revelation. Revelation was the highest moment of the Jewish encounter or the Jewish love experience with God. And what better way for a peoplehood to experience that moment than for everyone to be in perfect shape? Everyone could see. Even the blind were able to see. Even those who were hard of hearing could hear. Those who suffered from MS or Parkinson's, or in the morning couldn't wake up and couldn't stand up so quickly, they could walk without any problems. No one had problems with their hands, movement of their hands, opening their fingers. After all, this is revelation. Could there be a revelation to a people who was less than perfect? Each one had attained perfection in terms of their health. They were absolutely and completely healthy. And I wanted to get what you feel about this. I wanted to get your sense. Is this an appropriate description of what revelation should be? Is there something problematic with it? Is there an alternative approach? So let me just stop for a moment and get your feelings. And I'm going to try to get up on here. Yes, please.
I have a question. Why,
yes.
Why, when you talk about being healthy, is it just physically that you're referring to? What about mentally healthy? And what about
I would expand
in that aspect?
Yes, I would say that at that moment it was all perfect. What I'm putting out there is that revelation, since it is the highest level of God revealing himself, the way to describe that euphoric moment is that everyone was in excellent health. Everyone not only was in excellent physical health, but in excellent mental health. And as I'm reading from the rabbis, they say, B'chol ha'am roim, the blind were able to see. And those who were mute suddenly were able to speak. And the deaf, uminayin shelo haya bahem cheresh, they were able to hear. And I would add to that, and those who had problems walking could walk. Those who had problems lifting their hands in gratitude to God, they were able to lift their hands. It was this hallelujah moment. Those who were mentally unstable, those who were mentally challenged, those who were this, those who were that. Revelation means it's all perfect. That's what the ideal society is. Everyone is perfect. Yes, Ruby.
Rabbi, was it only for the moment or was for the rest of their lives?
Excuse me.
Yes, Ruby.
I have no problem with being told that everybody was completely healthy. I will accept that. I have problem with man accepting fully what they haven't heard as to what God is saying, as to the rules, as to the law. I think it goes against our nature. We can be very healthy. I'm not concerned about that, but I'm concerned about the full acceptance of this without knowing what it's all about.
Right. Now that's an issue. And that's a great comment, Ruby. It's not what we're talking about this morning, but it's a great, it's a great comment. I mean, normally you hear and then you decide, you walk into a store and, you're the big maven and buying all kinds of chit chats, Ruby, as I remember, right? And Stanley would go with you, but you want to hear, what is it? You want to hear about it. What does it cost? And then you do hear, they said, we will do, then I'll listen. What is that? That's a great question.
Rabbi,
yes.
There are a lot. Rabbi, there are a lot of hands up. I want to report whose I saw in order, if that's okay.
So you call on people, Shuli, if you don't want.
Okay, I think Estelle is next.
Okay.
Estelle, did you want to say something?
I think I said it, or maybe you didn't hear me.
Oh, you did. You did. You're right. Arnie's hand is up next.
Arnie?
You're
Sorry.
muted, Arnie.
So I was thinking that this is like the if you read the Bible in part as literature, this is the climax of the entire book. And when I hear we will do and we will listen, I don't know if it's spelled the same, but I hear neshama, which is soul. So to me, I work with people who are blind for my working life. And the last 7 years when I worked with the state, I had the privilege of working with the program that worked with people who are deaf and blind. So they were so cut off from communication. The only way they communicated is by sign language in the palm of their hand. Somebody would have to make sign language symbols in the palm of their hand so they could feel it and interpret it. And I would further just, I know it's a digression, but it was such a searing experience. On 9/11, everybody was in consternation. The deaf-blind was so cut off. They knew that something big was happening, but they didn't know what. And studies afterwards showed that people in general, the less they knew about what was going on, and as they came in late, there was more of a sense of dislocation, disorientation. For the deaf-blind, it was terrible. It was really terrible. There was a lot of mental disruptions and so forth. So in my image, we will do is important, but we will do soulfully means that lifting it to current times. No, we know that people who can't see are not going to all of a sudden be able to see, and people who have any other disability until and unless science catches up over a period of time, there's not going to be sudden miracles. However, what the miracle is that perhaps at Sinai, everybody in the community was one. It was singular. It was maybe everyone was helping one another. So people who are not able to lift their arms, somebody else came and helped lift their arms. And maybe someone who couldn't hear, there was somebody else who was saying what was happening, and so forth, all the way up and down the line. I've seen it in so many instances at work, in the shul, outside, where even perfect strangers come up to a person who's blind on a street corner and offer assistance to cross the street. So sometimes it's a very beautiful thing when people help one another, and maybe that's what happened at Sinai. I'd like to think that.
I appreciate that, and that's a great segue for me to say the following, and then I want to get everyone's comments. The rabbis are known to look at a midrash, is known. The rabbis look at a text and they have an agenda, and they sometimes can break down the text in such a way that it doesn't even flow in the proper context. So I actually read to you three words, V'chol ha'am ro'im, and all the people saw, which is the foundation for the idea. Well, if they all saw, there were hundreds of thousands, probably several, maybe 2-3 million people there, 2 million people. Is it possible that of 2 million, that there wasn't one person who was sight impaired? Impossible. And so the rabbis look at those three words and they lift it and they say, oh, miraculously, those who couldn't see suddenly were able to see. And whatever the physical ailment, it was corrected. Whatever, as Estelle said, whatever the mental issue, everyone was whole. That's the spiritual language that is often used. But if you look at the whole phrase, it doesn't stop after the word ro'im. We were reading it and we took these three words, v'chol, and all, ha'am, the people ro'im, saw. But actually the text continues. And the text continues and it says, v'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. And all the people, I'm now translating it literally, this is the whole piece. All of the people saw the voices. All the people saw the voices. Now, when you look at that, one wonders, what? You don't see voices. You don't see voices. You see objects, you see subjects, you see that which is inanimate, mountains and trees. And yesterday I walked with Dina. Dina took me to a beautiful place overlooking nature and seeing the most magnificent fowl, F-O-W-L. And I actually saw 2 alligators. Thank God they were resting comfortably, but they were big chevra. Thank God they were far away. It's all God's creation. The world is beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful world. That's what you see. Now, we heard sounds. I didn't see the sounds. My ears heard the sounds. You don't see sounds. What does it mean that you see sounds? So there is a spiritual, mystical teaching. I'll speak now just for about 3 or 4 minutes, and then I want to stop. There is a mystical teaching that says, and I can't quite put my hands on it, and I'm sure if Lori were out there listening, and I hope she's listening up in the heavens, she'd explain it. But there is a scientific teaching. I guess it's not scientific. It's a spiritual teaching that sometimes the sight is so clear that you go above the visual, that the sounds can be seen. I'm not actually sure exactly what that means. That too is what the rabbis say. They say, Ro'im et hanishma. People saw what is normally heard. She'i efshar lirot b'makom acher. They saw the sounds and they saw in ways that normally others would not be able to see. I guess that's even taking the first approach to another level. It's not just that people saw, but they're seeing, they're hearing. It even was on a higher level. I'd like to read to you just from the book that I hope one day will come out. And I want to just read to you this paragraph. Another thought comes to mind. Perhaps at Revelation, there were those among our people who were not in perfect physical shape. We're taking it now from the exact opposite approach. Let me see if I can get it over here. There may have been some who could not hear. They couldn't hear. However, our text may be suggesting that even the hearing impaired were able to complement this limitation by a greater ability to see. In other words, no, wait a minute. There were people actually who were there who could not hear.
they couldn't hear. But although they couldn't hear, and this is well known, they compensated for their inability to hear by perfecting, by strengthening their ability to see. Again, however our text may be suggesting that even the hearing impaired were able to complement this limitation by a greater ability to see. This may be the meaning of seeing voices. Unable to hear, they compensated with their ability to see. Similarly, there may have been those who couldn't speak or who couldn't see, but were able to somehow, with God's help, make up for this limitation at the most amazing moment in history. Now, Arnie, you touched on that because, Arnie, you said that, okay, in certain settings, even if people can't lift up their hands, their arms, so there will be others who are present in community, and how we desperately need community these days after 2 years of COVID, who lift the arms of people who can't lift their arms. And as a matter of fact, the people who lift arms may not be able to walk, but others can help them along in helping them walk somehow. But, and that point, Arnie, is very beautifully taken. But what we're saying here is that even within the human being, we have a way of compensating for our disabilities. Easier said than done, but because one has a disability, and I'm talking to myself and letting you listen, everybody has their limitations. That's no reason for pessimism and giving up. No, given the lot that we're given, we have the capacity to do the best we can and to compensate for our limitations by developing other strengths. And I continue writing. The idea that those with disabilities have a place in Judaism is fundamental to the Torah. Some of our greatest leaders struggled with limitations. Isaac, Yitzchak, couldn't see. Vatichena einav. Jacob, V'hu tzolea al yirecho, was lame. Moshe, we all know, was a kvad peh. He couldn't speak. But despite their difficulties, they were lifted and they reached the highest levels. You know, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who, whether you're a Chabadnik or not, he was a great man. He was a great man. He was a great inspiration. Just as, you know, at Chovevei Torah at Marat, we try to inspire young men and women to go out. And some do, some don't. Thank God the vast majority do. But he had the capacity to inspire thousands of shluchim. They go out to the furthest corners of the world, and there they are serving. He had a very optimistic view of the world. And he was very careful with language. And my dear friend, Rabbi Joseph Telushkin, in his book, The Rebbe, which is very fast and must reading, so he writes that the Rebbe always used positive terminology. For example, he never used the word deadline. Let's say if you're a writer and you're a journalist, there's a deadline. You've got a deadline. A deadline to put in your term paper, a deadline to finish this chapter of the book. He never used the word deadline. Do you know what he used? He used the word due date. Due date, almost like a pregnancy. It's your due date. It's not your deadline. Wow, that's worth the price of admission. He never, ever called in Hebrew a hospital a bet cholim. He never called a hospital a place for the sick. He called it a bet refuah, a place of healing. It's really fascinating. It's not a place of the sick, it's a place to heal. And then he was at a setting where apparently there were some soldiers who came to visit 770, his office, and people referred to them as chayalim ptsuim, soldiers who are injured, who are wounded. All kinds of soldiers came. And he said, no, 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 no. He doesn't use the term soldiers who are injured, who are wounded, not chayalim psuim. He used the language chayalim mitzdayanim, mitzdayanim from the word mitsuyan, soldiers who excel. And when he was asked to explain himself, after all, this person can't walk. So the Rebbe said, yeah, he can't walk, or she can't walk, but look at the way they've developed their upper muscle strength. Like my friend Danny Human. Danny Human is in a wheelchair, but from the waist up, he's a tiger. I mean, you can't imagine. He moves those wheels of his wheelchair, certainly when he was younger, faster than I could walk. In fact, I told you the story recently that when I described him as somebody who was confined to his wheelchair, he said, I'm not confined to my wheelchair. I walk in my wheelchair. So when we take it from this perspective, I'm looking at those same words, we're saying something very different. And Arnie, you opened this up. And that is, wait a minute. It's not that the blind could see at Revelation. It's not that the deaf could hear. It's not that the lame could walk. It's not that those who are struggling mentally, and who doesn't have some kind of mental struggle, some kind of emotional limit, it's not that they were suddenly perfect. No, they were who they were. But for those people, v'chol ha'am ro'im et hakolot, for those who couldn't hear the voices, they compensated and they were able to see at Revelation something that others couldn't see. Now, this is taking it from the exact opposite approach. That Revelation, which is the highest ecstatic moment of God revealing himself, that highest moment is not expressed when there is a people and every single one is in perfect physical shape or in perfect spiritual, emotional, psychological shape. No. The highest moment, the ecstatic moment of Revelation is that everyone is welcome in. Whatever our challenges, whatever our disabilities, and who doesn't have some kind of disabilities, we're welcomed in and we're part of that Revelation moment. And so I conclude this piece with these words, and then we'll open this up. I ask you, which is the greater miracle at the time of Revelation? On the one hand, it certainly reflects God's intervention if all people, even those who couldn't see, were given sight at that moment. On the other hand, Revelation, which embraces even those with limitations, and I add, and who amongst us does not have some limitations, makes an extraordinary statement. It teaches us that just as everyone was welcome at Sinai, so too must we do everything in our power to ensure that everyone in our community is embraced. It's ibcha mistaveh, as we say in the Gemara. It's adraba, it's punkt fakert. It's the opposite. The test, I think, of, look, you can argue that a God of love is a God of love who's going to cure us all. It's just not real. It's not real. Now, you can argue that that was an unreal moment. All I'm offering is, without coming down on any side, is that there is another very, very different approach. That this was a real moment where all people were welcomed in, notwithstanding whatever and every human being. There is no human being. You know, the Bible says, "Ein bayit asher ein sham met." I think that's the source of the expression. Everyone has a skeleton in their closet. The Bible says there was no house where there wasn't somebody who died. And its description of the slaying of the firstborn. Everybody has, as my father would say, their pekabah. So I ask you, what is the greatest revelation? Is the greatest moment of revelation when everyone is cured on every level, we stand in perfection? Or is the greatest moment of revelation that we stand as we are and we're able to compensate, we're able to draw strength from others, compensate for our limitations or from within ourselves, and we're accordingly embraced by God at revelation. I think we have to, some of you know, we call the synagogue the bayit. You know that very well. I like the term the bayit, the house, the home, because we're a family. But I don't know if you know this. I've said often, I also view the synagogue, the model of the synagogue, as a hospital. And when I say that around when I would give this kind of talk around the country, people, what? A synagogue is a hospital? A synagogue is a place for sick people? No, I don't mean it that way. It's a hospital. There are two kinds of synagogue. There's a synagogue, which is a country club. Everybody who's there is just perfect. And then there's a real synagogue. It's a hospital. We all come in as human beings with limitations. And here we are standing in front of the ark, and we're all there and we're all welcomed. I've always felt that the bayit should be the place that welcomes all, no matter what the limitation is. And that means welcoming us all, because we all have limitations. So what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Anyone?
Rabbi, should I share the list of people who've been waiting?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so we have Bert. I'm just going to tell you everyone who I have waiting, and then if I haven't said your name, put your hands up again so I can see you. I see Bert, Natalie, Tova, Margaret, where is she? Oh yeah. Linda. Does that sound right, everybody? Did I miss anyone?
Let's begin.
So Bert.
Hi. I love what you just had to say, but before you said that, I had an alternative, interpretation that it doesn't mean literally that the people, couldn't see suddenly saw, but what it means is that the revelation was such that their personhood and their neshama, got to feel it and understand it and accept the Torah. That was the nature of the revelation. I love what you had to say about the acceptance. Each person, is having abilities and disabilities. But I think that the very act of revelation here made it that it penetrated each person's personhood and neshama, and that therefore they were able to see and they were able to walk and they were able to do these things, not that they literally did that.
I see. No, thank you. I appreciate that.
I can say this.
Anyone, please? Julie, who's up now?
Natalie is next.
Yes. I am following what Bert said in the idea that there was a transformation when something so amazing happened. It didn't make them actually overcome their disabilities, but they were transformed by the spiritual that moment, and they were as if they could see, as if they could hear, as if they could overcome their disabilities.
I hear that. I think it's said very beautifully. It's basically in line with what I tried to share, but you're really expanding it. It's not just that they couldn't see, so their hearing compensated, or you're saying that moment of revelation itself was that compensation, Natalie. And I appreciate that. Bert, I appreciate that. I don't know if I can get that into the publisher. They probably won't appreciate these changes at this moment, but we'll see. Julie, we'll give that a try. Tova.
Tova.
Okay. Also, I just want to say that, your interpretation was beautiful. I, of course, see it much more simply. And you said, Kol ha'am ro'in. When we understand something, when we're working on understanding something and we get it, we say, I see. So, on ro'in.
That's a very beautiful.
I think that et hakolot is explanatory. We get that understanding, it has nothing to do with disability.
I'm looking down.
Tova,
I'm looking down because I'm taking notes.
No, that's okay. So, the whole nation saw. However they saw, whether they saw it with their eyes, whether they saw it with their ears, kol ha'am ro'im et hakolot, everything. Mm-hmm. And then when we get to Na'aseh v'nishma, I think that supplements that. They say everybody understood, and we said whatever we understood, whatever we heard, whatever came to us, we're going to do v'nishma, and we're going to listen to what comes next.
Mm-hmm. Right. I appreciate that. I'm writing it down. So thank you. I think, by the way,
in other words, what you have already said.
Right. Ruby, maybe next week, because the Na'aseh v'nishma, what you opened up with, Ruby, is actually next week's portion. So maybe you're prompting me to try to deal with that impossible question. How did they accept it so fine? But Tov, I love it. I get it. Hold on, Roim. I got it. So, yes.
Linda is next.
I think that whatever your disability is, you compensate by using other parts of your gifts. I have a lot of hearing impaired people in my family, and you see them watching, besides wearing hearing aids, they're watching how you speak and what you're saying, and they're using that. And we all compensate in some way by using the other abilities that we have.
Right.
And I appreciate to buy it in that way, because my granddaughter, who's hearing impaired, is also a group leader at the Buy It. And she works with a young lady who has other disabilities, challenges, and they're both working as group leaders.
Yes.
So
I appreciate that so much.
No exclusion at the Buy It.
Right. That's really been the MO of the Buy It. And
if you ever go up to the groups, my granddaughter's the one with the hearing aids, but she's leading a group. So
that's wonderful. That's music to my ears. And I remember all the way back in the 70s when we started programs for those who were struggling with Downs and autism. There was a very big
Downs young lady who works there now as a group leader.
Yes, thank you. Going back 40 years, there was a big pushback from the community. The community was not happy that people with Downs were coming into the shul and playing such a central role. But from all that we've done over the years, I'm proudest of that program. And in the end, what I learned was that it wasn't us, those who don't have Downs, and them, it's we. We're all in this together. And we have much to learn from each other.
And it's very sweet. The Downs young lady takes care of a young man who has other issues. And she's a one-on-one. I've seen them when I've gone up to speak to my granddaughter. And it's just beautiful. They take care of each other.
Thank you so much, Linda. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Margaret. Margaret is next. I missed her by accident.
Please, Margaret.
So I just was going to say, I think it can't be that revelation is only possible, because if you look for people who are perfect, if you look at the Midrash, the way that you explained it, the first one, it begs the question then, is revelation only possible for people who are perfect, which can't be the case. And even it can only just be that people with certain disabilities, like revelation has to be possible for more than just perfection. Otherwise, none of us are going to be able to have revelation. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah. I appreciate that very, very much. And, maybe when we get to it, it does raise issues for, as a Kohen, the Torah says that a Kohen that's blemished can't serve. And that's something that we have to deal with. What do you mean? I've received that question. I remember there was a young man who was in a wheelchair, a Kohen, and asked me whether he can duchen, whether he can say the priestly benediction. And of course, my instincts were, of course you can duchen. And when somebody questioned me about it, I kind of paraphrased Rabbi Soloveitchik. I said, although nobody can get to his level, but I said, look, you want the specifics, I'll argue my case tomorrow. But part of being a rabbi, just like part of being a doctor, is you hear about something and your instincts are important. It's impossible for me to imagine that a Kohen in a wheelchair can't duchen. It's just impossible. And indeed, looking into it, that is, of course, one can duchen. But it's a big question. There all my life when I was a kid, I thought revelation was presenting the ideal of perfection, and I'm trying to say that, perfection is the enemy of good. There is that expression. Somebody says it, and I think it's for me the ultimate revelation is that we came as we were, and we were embraced and welcomed. And
excuse me, Rabbi. I just want to mention that perfection is a part of the ritual. When you have sacrifices, it has to be an animal that is perfect, that has no blemishes. So the idea of revelation made everybody perfect.
Yep.
Am I saying it wrong? I don't know how to say it.
I don't know whether, I'm not sure that anyone can reach perfection. If somebody were to reach perfection, I don't know why the animals have to be perfect. What does that mean? Okay, that maybe animals can be, I doubt it, but for me, if one attains perfection, if one believes I'm perfect, then it's a denial of God. Maybe God can be perfect. I know that Estelle would have a lot, and I have a lot to say about that too, because there's, God could use a lot of help in a lot of areas where we just don't get why there's so much evil in the world. And I know we have to do more, but God, we need your help in doing more as well. But perfection would mean it's almost like a denial of God. There's only one God. God is perfect. If anybody else is perfect, it's almost like a belief that people become a deity. And I don't think halacha is perfect. I think that's been our mistake. Halacha is excellent, but it's not perfect. There's a difference between excellence and perfection. Perfection is perfection. Like, for example, I put on tefillin this morning. The boxes of the tefillin have to be a square. Well, as a former mathematician, is there a perfect square? There is no perfect square. There is no perfect square. If you want a perfect square, no one's going to put on tefillin. It's, you reach for it. So I have to think about what Edith said. As usual, she brings up a good point, that term is found in the Bible relative to animals. And we do what we do. We can take it one piece at a time and struggle to understand. Vivian, what do you think about this? You worked all your life with people with all kinds of issues.
Yeah, well, I think of perfection as being a problem for humans, because if they're striving for perfection, they can never reach it. They never do. And it becomes a real problem as they keep searching and trying and attempting to try to do the impossible. Only God is perfect. And psychologically,
Vivian, I jotted down that expression. You think that perfection is a problem for humans. That's a beautiful, I really like that. Perfection is a problem for humans.
And it's only at some point when you let go of it and strive for excellence, that's okay. But even excellence has imperfections in it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was thinking of the psychological aspect of perfection, where it's a definite negative.
Yes,
I really, and and if we have the expectation of reaching for perfection, we're doomed to be disappointed. Nobody can reach that. Impossible. And I love the expression, yes. Perfection is a problem for humans. That's a Vivian Crone line. You should put that, that's a beautiful phrase. I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Tova, did you want to say? Oh, sorry, Fern.
Rabbi, am I up?
Yeah, I think Robert Kalfas's hand was up first, and then Fern.
No
sorry.
Okay. No problem.
I'm going to quote Rabbi Weiss. We don't have the disabled, we have the able and the not yet disabled, which I remember hearing you say that perhaps 30 years ago. I didn't really understand at the time, but now having had so many physical setbacks and then struggling to overcome them and seemingly trying to come back to the level where I was, and the recent stroke, and then struggling with times when I had trouble speaking, or 2 months ago, I found I was biting my tongue a lot. And I just read 2 nights ago, that was because of the stroke. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, Rabbi, I never thought of the Bayit as a hospital, but I have another reframing a thought for you about that. Think of it as the house of healing. People come to this synagogue to be healed.
Yes.
Mentally, if you want to divide up into like mentally or emotionally or spiritually, but it's house of healing.
Yes.
I thought of that when I was coming to physical therapy for the last several months. And one of the head therapists was thinking about renaming it. It's therapy care. It's a great place, great therapist. I said, how about house of healing? That's what it is. It's enabled me to, they rebuilt me so I could walk well,
right,
and working on balance and everything else. But they have the,
I like that.
That's probably what.
Thank you.
Shlomo did.
And I think the line that we had is, and I don't think it's my line, it's said by somebody that the world is not divided between the sick and the well, but rather divided between the sick and the not yet sick. And Toby hates that quote, but there is something, I couldn't think of that. There's somebody else who says that. I'm not sure who it is. But House of Healing. Yeah. Fern, please. Thank you. Thank you, Robert.
Three of the most powerful words that we spoke today is "we will do." They listened after, they heard after, they spoke after. First thing is "we will do," and to me, this is very moving and striking, because no matter what, do it. No matter what your imperfections are, what you think you're not so good at, doesn't matter. Just do it. Do it, and then think about it after. Hear about it after, but don't be afraid and do it.
There's a lot to what you're saying, Fern, because I'm hearing from many people that there's a fear now after what happened on Shabbat and after Pittsburgh and Poway and Muncie and Jersey City. People are afraid to go to synagogue. And if we're going to act afraid, it's over. And it's so very critical to just do it. Just do it. Just go for it.
And that's where the faith and faith comes in, because you have the faith, you can just do it.
Yes.
We can say actions speak louder than words.
Right. I would imagine when the rabbi, towards the end, the way we're hearing it described, to throw a chair at someone, my goodness, it takes a lot of strength. But like you're saying, Fern, there comes a certain point, just do it.
Just do it.
There was a great Rebbe, the Kutzka, used to say, and this is very well known because there's a song, Kol ha'olam kulo geshet sar ma'od, the whole world is a very narrow bridge, but the main thing is don't be afraid. Vayikar lo lefached klal. Easier said than done, but there's something to it. Just do it. Good.
Rabbi,
on that note, is there, oh yeah, Tova, please, last word, please. Tova. You're on mute, Tova.
We've been approaching this as looking at individuals in the Am. But the Torah says, Kol ha'am, and maybe we should look at that because they came into Egypt as a family. They were individuals, but now they came out of Egypt. They're not individuals anymore. Now we're establishing a nation, an Am. Right. And when the Am understands, and when the Am accepts, there may be individuals who disagree, but that doesn't change the attitude of the Am.
Yes, I love that. You know, when people ask me about this class, I always say that the best part of the class, and I really mean this, is not, the best part of the class is not, the best part of the class, did I undo this? Well. Hi, everybody.
May I, Bobby?
Yeah, please, Judy. Go on.
I share on a personal note. First of all, when you were talking about the disabled, I cringed and I felt like I was being put in Chayrim because I'm not, I am disabled and I would not qualify among the Kol Ha'am Roim. However, then learning from you, and I know that Hashem is a loving God, I'm sure that he loves us and would not want me or anybody else to be in a Chayrim, not loved by him. And then I moved on to the next wording of more important. Then the Na'aseh v'nishma. It's in the future. With just like several people have said about Na'aseh, but it also reminds me of, like in the Kiddush, Hashem created the world for man la'asot. So we are partners with Hashem. And the Nishma is it's all both expressed in the future. We have faith that we will live. It reminds me of my mother, Aleha Hashalom, that she had extremely hard of hearing. And every day that I spoke with her, the next day she said, we speak tomorrow. As though she had such a belief that she would be hearing tomorrow. She had immense faith, coming from as a survivor of the Shoah. And the future tense of everything is, looking towards the future, that we are partners with Hashem in creation, and we will understand eventually. The Nishma is for understand and hear. But, it will happen.
Thank you so much, Judy. And I just want to, I see Vivian's hand, so Vivian, please.
Yeah, I want to go back to the emphasis on na'aseh, the doing. Most religions, as far as I know, are based on belief systems, but not Judaism. Our religion is based on mitzvot, commandments, things that we have to do. And the belief system maybe will come later, but the first thing is to do what you're supposed to do. And it's even relevant today with COVID. You don't have to ask questions. They say, wear that mask, do what you have to do. Doing is the important thing. Na'aseh, we will do.
Right. I just wanted to thank you, Vivian. And I know that Shana Leigh is on, and I hope Daniela's on, and Jessica's on, maybe Barbara's on, a whole bunch of very important people to me, to all of us. And when people ask me about this class, I always say, well, the best part of this session is it's not a class, it's a discussion. And it's not what I have to say, it's what everybody has to say. And I took very, very careful notes. So I thank all of you so much for your input. And let me bless you. Have a sweet Shabbat. And we all offer prayers of gratitude that those who were taken hostage are safe. And together we also recite a prayer for all those who lost their lives in that terrible Bronx fire.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the whole rabbinic team was at the funeral on Sunday. You know that fire occurred very, very close to the original Hebrew Institute of University Heights, which was in the University Tremont Avenue area. So just I love you all. Just my blessings. Take care of yourselves. Stay warm. And just have a sweet, beautiful, beautiful Shabbat. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Thank
Shabbat
you, Rabbi.
shalom. Thank
Yes,
you.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Avi. Yeah.